And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
We've been talking about this a lot lately. There has been just an influx of Pathfinder hardcovers ever since second edition was announced, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Coming in January, we've got Lost Omens, Gods and Magic, which I know a lot of people consider cornerstone lore, and based on the first edition Gods and Magic, people have high expectations for this book. So here to talk about it is Pathfinder creative director, Mr. James Jacobs.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's good. How are you doing, James?
I'm busy, very, very busy. But yeah, it's good. It's well, like we were talking about earlier, it's like this fire hose of just product is just spraying out, and it's exciting because we've got so much going on that it's certainly not boring. And being able to get stuff like Gods and Magic or Gods and Magic, which it's a real thing.
Man. Oh, I love
is that
cover
so as
much.
gorgeous in real life as it looks in pictures?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how. You can
I'll pull it up on screen, full screen here in a minute for you.
Yeah, but it's exciting because we're starting to do different sorts of treatments for our covers rather than just person fighting monster type situations. We're getting a little bit more experimental about how we present covers for our products. So,
yeah, I remember how much the Lost Omens World Guide, the cover stood out as like it just thematically, the colors were different. It was just there were so many things on that cover that stood out, and I wasn't used to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really. I mean, the whole point is it's supposed to look different on the shelf because it's a new edition. But I mean, the same point, we wanted to make sure that it looked similar enough that you would still know that it was a Pathfinder product. So it was a tricky thing to split the difference on.
So I'm really curious because a lot of the times when you all do covers, it's always these like really impressive like in world scenes, whereas this is not that. Like I can't think of any non-collector's edition covers you guys have put out where it is a stylized fresco or like looks like the cover of a real book, or basically it doesn't look like just a really cool piece of awesome art. This is meant to be a cover. You would not see this walking around in Galarian, or maybe you would if you stood in the right particular place.
No, I mean, that's part of the idea is that we wanted to have these things look more distinctive even in their own lines. And obviously with this setup we're able to do a little bit more just kind of symbolic type stuff because it's got on the top half there, it's got the Starstone with a bunch of failed gods trying to reach up for it. And then down underneath, you've got the three, deities that ascended from the Starstone, Caden, Kalian, Iomade, and Nagorber. And the whole point of it is basically that it's just kind of a snapshot of that whole element of the core pantheon. These three deities are very different, but they all came basically from the same location. So it's the first time I think we've ever illustrated the Starstone as well. And it's just part of our new goal of getting stuff onto the covers that is really kind of important rather than just a random scene of an iconic fighting this or that or the other thing. We're still going to be doing that like we did for we had like people fighting a Wendigo in the previous book. But we're increasingly starting to like feel our feet and explore a little bit. Gods and Magic was the first cover really that we had a little bit more room to experiment and explore with after the core rulebook and the bestiary and Lost Omens World Guide and all of these other things just kind of hitting all at the same time. So
you can expect a favor. Sorry, go ahead.
The next couple of covers coming up are going to be equally kind of different in some ways. I can't wait to show them off. There's some good stuff.
Can you do me a favor and repeat Caden's last name and how you pronounced it?
Oh, Kalian.
So I've been listening to Roll for Combat's doing an actual play, and they keep pronouncing it Caden Kaleen. And every time they do it, it's like that. No, that's not. Is it? Is that right?
It's one of the fun things about fun. It's interesting for sure. All of the stuff that we publish, we don't have actual pronunciation guides in there. We just spell it out and let people figure it out, really. And it doesn't just happen with like the made up words we make. I've heard people say, necromancy. I've heard people say lycanthropes instead of lycanthropes. It's a weird sort of situation. But I mean, as long as you can figure out what you're talking about.
And I see Roll for Combat's actually in chat right now and is reacting in real time to be corrected.
It's the most fun when you get somebody and they're arguing about a pronunciation of a word they think that you made up, but it's actually like from history. And so Asmodeus is not something we made up. It's you can go to Google and type into the search or whatever.
Now, before we get too deep into Gods and Magic, which is going to be the main content we talk about, there's something I wanted to bring up. In July of 2009, you were on Private Sanctuary, which is the precursor to No Direction, for the first time. And I asked you, since we were talking about the bestiary, who I had to thank for the inclusion of the Froghemoth in the first edition bestiary. And you said it was you, and I thanked you, and I was very happy with it. So now who do I have to blame for the Froghemoth not making the cut in the second edition bestiary?
Jason Bowman.
Oh, what happened there? Did you lose that fight?
Jason, I think, doesn't like that I like the Froghemoth.
Oh,
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure who made the choice. One of the very specific things we chose, that was just kind of me just firing shots at Jason. So
okay.
The main reason is that with Bestiary for second edition, we don't feel so much in the shadow of Dungeons and Dragons as much. We've had 10 plus years of doing our own thing, and we really wanted the Bestiary to kind of celebrate a lot of the stuff that we've done over the past, decade plus. And as a result, we had to really make some hard choices on what monsters to include, what ones not to include. And the Froghemoth is kind of got these two things going against it. It's on the higher end of the scale where it's a higher level creature. And since this is the core of the first bestiary, and so many people are going to start the game out, it has to be weighted toward the low end of the scale with as far as level and challenges. And it's something that is not a Paizo original. It's something that it's a cool monster, of course, but it's something that we use through the OGL. And so those two reasons really are the main reason why the Froghemoth isn't in bestiary one. It won't always not be in second edition, I suspect. So,
all right,
stay tuned there.
That really wishy-washy promise you just made.
Yeah.
Param, are you ready to move on to Gods and Magic?
I am, and you've murdered my bit. So go with you.
I'm sorry. As I told you, I had a bit. So, Gods and Magic. This is. I don't think anyone is surprised that this is one of the first hardcover books that's coming out for the Lost Omens line. Is there any particular reason that it was the third of the first three?
Yeah, it's really the first three books that we did cover the core fundamentals of what you need to know to make your character in Golarion game. And the first one, you've got to know where you're from. You've got to know, what the planet is like. That's why World Guide came first. It's got all of the locations, all of the regions and everything like that. And then the next thing you need to know is who you are. That's what your ancestry is, what organization you belong to. And that's really why we focused in on having the character guide be the second book. The third book is What Do You Believe? And that is basically not just gods, but it's philosophies, it's beliefs, it's all sorts of stuff like that. And that's all in Gods and Magic. It's not just deities. It's a lot of deities, but it's also got stuff like about different organizations like the Green Faith or pantheons and stuff like that in there. And they kind of build on each other. You can't really talk about what a person's, ethnicity is or what sort of like a Hell Knight is without knowing about Cheliax or these other locations. And you can't really talk about, what people worship until you know what they are and where they're from. So it's these three we needed to have the locations and the background stuff in place before we started talking about deities and beliefs.
I was also surprised with how... Go ahead.
It's also a case of we wanted to do all three books, and the idea of which one would be a more, better sellers or would appeal to certain people and stuff like that. And there's all sorts of different things going in there. But the main reason is we needed the other two books in order to talk about this book.
So with the title itself, and you talking about it being a very heavily on beliefs and philosophies, and definitely heavy on gods, is this really way more gods than magic, or equal split, or are you saying gods are magic?
It's really more of a case of like, well, on one level, it was the very first book we did back in the day about all the deities was called Gods and Magic. So on one level, we're trying to be sort of self-referential about that whole thing. But we also wanted to let people know that it's not. It's certainly about the deities and stuff like that in the setting, but a lot of the character classes in the game don't really have load-bearing elements. I mean, clerics obviously, champions obviously, but beyond that, it starts to get more and more like you don't really need a deity to worship. A lot more people like magic, and by using it gods and magic, that kind of spreads out the idea more that it's not just the book that you pick up if you're a cleric. It's the book that you pick up if you want to be involved in like the supernatural. That was one of the original titles we were kicking around, was something along the lines of a supernatural element. It was a terrible title, but we were trying to figure out a way to like, here's like just the sort of the supernatural kind of magical elements of the setting. And we didn't want it to sound like just ultimate magic too, because there's more, deity stuff going on there. So, and then we finally just ended up calling it Gods of Magic, because again, that harkens back to the first one we did.
I was surprised that the God section in both the core rulebook and the world guide does not go into a whole lot of detail. It feels like Gods of Magic really is going to be the first introduction for people that are new to Pathfinder for a lot of important lore.
Yeah. Gods of Magic is something we always knew that we were going to be producing, even, years ago. So when we were figuring out what to put into the core rulebook and the world guide, we knew that we would have that information coming out just down the line in the third book. So it was a case of like, we needed to, in the core rulebook in particular, we needed to have those names in the book so that people started, learning the names and figuring out who they were. And you need those choices when you're making clerics and to a lesser extent champions, of course. It was a little tricky in the world guide because we started talking about some brand new deities that didn't really have much going on in the prior edition, like Nocticular or Cassandali or a couple of others. And we didn't yet have the information about them that was going into Gods of Magic because it hadn't been written or is in the process of being written. So we had to sort of guess a little bit. There's a little bit of growing pains. So by the time all three books are out, they're going to be able to support each other in a way that they didn't really when they came out one at a time. But part of the problems is we haven't figured out time travel yet. We can't publish something in the future and then pull it back and release them all at the same day. We're working on it.
Yeah, that would make your job a lot easier.
I don't know. I think it'd make it more complicated because, future James would come back and have all sorts of ideas and past James wouldn't trust them. And
you would not trust your future doppelganger.
I have never seen a movie about time travel that is not in some way a horror movie.
Nope. All right. Sorry.
I know. It's like,
no, you got us there. Nope.
I mean, even you look like Back to the Future, and it's like
that's what I was thinking. It's like he does some weird stuff with his mom.
Yeah, it's like there's some pretty scary stuff in there. So, yeah.
Roll for combat suggesting Austin Powers.
Austin Powers? That's not really. Well, I don't know.
No, maybe having to watch that movie again would be a horror movie.
How much of Gods and Magic is going to be like players and like in-world characters' point of view? How much of it is it going to be like actual established history from the gods' point of view? Like, what's the balance there?
It's pretty much the same way that we've approached the topic before in Intercede Gods and earlier in Gods of Magic. It's got a lot of information about the gods themselves, and even though it's so well over 100 pages long, there's still not a lot of room to talk about a lot of this stuff. We don't really go into like the full-on details of like the minutia or the deep continuity of like creation myths or stuff like that really in here. It's really kind of focused on what a cleric or a worshiper of one of these deities needs to know, and what somebody who there's a little bit in there of like how their relation, the deities' relationships with each other and where they live and all of that is in there. But it's really kind of focused on the in-world character side of things, but presented in the standard sort of you are a person on Earth reading about it rather than somebody in-world reading about the deities. There's also, and now that I think about, I mean, there's like rules for like the spells that let you take on your avatar's form. spells. There's mechanics in there for like what happens if you beg your deity for intervention, what sort of boons and curses and things might happen if you beg for your god, and they're like, no, I think maybe you need a little bit of punishment, and exactly what those types of situations happen when you maybe beg when you shouldn't.
Now, I remember when with Inner Sea Gods, we were actually kind of surprised with how very deliciously crunchy it was. When we expected, because it had campaign setting on the title, and traditionally the Gods articles, which while being much beloved, were not exactly full of rules. And you're talking about this book like it's also going to be deliciously crunchy. Is this going to be very deliciously crunchy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just grabbing it here, I don't want to show it off yet because I don't want to steal too much thunder. But just randomly opening to a page, not so randomly. I'm trying to find one. So like Urgatho is spread right here. You've got basically 2 pages of. So let's see here. Actually, find one that. Anyway, so like Nethys, for example, just showing you the spread of Nethys's information. You can see a lot of that is just read aloud text. I just showed it there real quick, but so you got about a page of background flavor, lore stuff. You've got a little sort of section up the top that tells you things like who worships him, what alignments they are, what sort of domains they grant, and stuff like that. And then there's a chunk for all of them about the divine intercession. That's what happens if you like ask for a boon or ask or do something bad and end up getting cursed by your deity. And then a lot of that information is sort of a little bit kind of crunchy. It's not something that you are guaranteed to get. It's more of something that if it happens, it gives tools to the GM to have your deity and your faith kind of interact with how your game is going on. But then in the back, there's new magic items, there's spells, there's lots of different things going on back there. So like, there's a bunch of player options going on there, and that's probably enough for people to freeze screen and then figure it all out. But there's definitely a lot in here. One of the things that I've always thought we should be doing is, if it's a rule book, there should be lore in there to make the rules interesting. If it's a lore book, there should be rules in there to make the lore playable. We're not really building just a world for people to write stories in. We're building a world for people to play and game in. And so they really all do need a certain amount of rules content. And that's something that going forward, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. The breakdown of like, if it's in the world, the Lost Omens line, there's still going to be rules in there. If it's in the rulebook line, you're still going to see Galarian lore in there. So kind of like in the Bestiary has all those sidebars about like different bits of information about what monsters and weird sort of little tidbits of lore about them. So it's something that we're trying to kind of break down those silos.
I just opened the Archives of Nethys just to double check how many deities there were, and there are far more than I can count.
Yeah, there's
more than I even realized. How are you managing this extensive roster of gods?
So we've always had this sort of, in my head, there's always been like this core 20, and that's because it's a D20 game. There's a 20-sided die. It's just you can pick any number. We picked 20. 20 is also kind of handy because it gives you 2 deities for every alignment, and then lets you have a little bit of leftover space to cover some more of, interesting areas you wanted to cover, but it gives more choices to player characters. And so with a book, like anytime we do a book like this, we have to choose what we're doing, because otherwise, like you said, if we wanted to try to give equal room to all 300, 400 deities we've ever mentioned in the setting, and the list is still growing, it grows in this book, then they would get 1 or 2 lines of text each, and that doesn't help anyone. So for something like Gods and Magic, we basically say, well, we need to focus in on the core 20 gods, and they get 2 pages each. And then we look at that and we say, we want to do another 20 deities, the ones that are kind of the next tier down in influence in the world, and maybe a couple of the ones that are up and coming, and then throw in a couple of obscure brand new ones just to keep people on their toes. So we did those 20 deities with 1-page entries each. And that got us to about 40 deities out of those hundreds. After that, we started looking at like Pantheon. So we've got like the Demon Lords section that kind of covers all of them at once. We've got like the Great Old Ones and the Elder Gods or the Outer Gods and all that. We've got Imperial Lords. And then that takes us to, further than halfway through the book. And we still got hundreds of deities back there. And as a result, the book has at its back these giant lists, kind of like what we did in Gods in Inner Sea Gods, where it's got all of this information for a lot of the deities, not all of them, but as many as we could fit in. And it's got all the stuff like their domains and their anathemas and edicts and stuff like that. And going forward, we're going to continue doing, God articles in Pathfinder Adventure Pass, and we're going to be exploring deities and other campaign setting books and all that. This book really then sets the foundation, the template for how we're going to be presenting that information going forward. And we just fit as many as we can get in, and then we'll listen to people reading back. It's like, oh, I want to learn more about Regathiel or Pelura or Cerulean, or we'll get feedback from people, and then we'll know where to go from there. Hopefully.
Elf Tiro in chat is saying they counted them, and there are more than 400 gods in Pathfinder.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like I was saying, this book adds even more that there are some gods in here that have never been really mentioned before anywhere else. Because that's another thing too. We've done this book now 3 times, and so we're trying to keep ourselves, interested. We want to do new things and explore new, ideas and all of that. And it's a different world than it was 10 years ago. And so that means that even though in world the gods may have not changed, the world that we're publishing in has changed. So it's got different focuses and stuff like that.
And here's a question I think is going to come up a lot with just especially these early books you guys put out for second edition. We have the previous 2 books. And
right.
Love them. They're great books. What is the new exciting thing that this version does? Like, what's one of the big ones that you're really proud of that I won't have just by pulling old Sean K. Reynolds' Gods and Magic off the shelf?
Right. Well, one of the things that you won't have we've got it into Planar Adventures, so it's not something new, but it's those rules for like what happens if you are a devout worshiper of Abadar and you're on an adventure and you've used all your spells up and everybody's dying and you have no other options and you say, please just come in and save me. You wouldn't really have any guidance in the previous books. This book gives you that information on what to do. It also gives you the edicts and anathemas, which is kind of a new that's always existed in the setting, but it's never been hard coded into like the way the character classes work. So you'll have all of that information for all the deities. It's all new art, so that's always fun. New illustrations of all the deities. One thing that Eleanor and Luis, who were the primary developers, I need to call out them real quick. They just have been hit the ground running with this whole line and have been doing amazing things with it. And it's just staggering because I've been working on this setting for even before Pathfinder came along. A lot of it is from my homebrew, so I've got it all blundering around in my head. And just watching them, like I said, hit the ground running and be able to gather all these different threads and make a book out of it is really staggering. And one of the things that they brought to this book was the idea that we've always illustrated our deities as like people, that you could meet down on walking on the street. But in world, you've got statues, you've got tapestries, you've got cave paintings, you've got candles, you've got macrame, you've got all sorts of just art manifestations of how things would look inspired by the gods. And so for each one of the core deities, we've got like Rovagog has like a cave painting of him on a wall. Shellam's got a picture of her as a stained glass window. And it's really, really cool ideas that they've come up with for all of the core deities that you can see how their mythology kind of informs the art in world. So that's something that we've never done before. That's really cool.
I have to ask, is Caden's a motivational poster hanging there, baby?
Is what that?
Is Caden's a motivational poster?
Caden's is, let me look real quick. I'm not going to show it off because this will be a preview that maybe we can show up later. I'll tell you what it is.
Caden's would be his face on toast.
It is. That's good. It's the top of a keg with his image burned into it with a wood burning.
That's clever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions from chat. Before I get to them, Param, can you remind people that, that's an option?
Yes, because every episode of No Direction is recorded live in front of a Twitch audience. If you want to ask any questions for us, you can do so every Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern, and that is 6 o'clock p.m. Pazo time. And just get into the chat, and we will be directing those towards our guests and ourselves throughout the episode.
The first question comes from Caring Lizard. It happened earlier in the interview, and so you already touched on this. But any evil options in Gods? Oh, called the Gods and Monsters, but Gods and Magic.
Yeah. It's options for player characters, options for GMs. I mean, there's evil gods in this book. We've got Rovagog, Urgathoa. We've got a lot of the great old ones. We've got demon lords. archdevils, the four horsemen. There's a lot of stuff in here. If you are either a player of an evil character or a GM who needs, cool villains to throw at your party, there's a lot of stuff in here. Yeah.
King of Rock asks, will Lost Omens Gods and Magic set up the future of the Oracle?
Not intentionally, because it was written and created over a year ago. And at that point, we knew at some point we were going to be doing something with adding more classes to this game. We didn't know what classes we were going to do yet. So this book was already well off to the printer before we decided that those four were going to be in the Advanced Player's Guide. The reverse might have some influence. We might look at this book and then say, well, this book is set up in this way. Oracles could maybe interface with Faith in this manner. So we'll see. I mean, right now, the playtest is just wrapping up in the next couple of days as far as I know. And we're still looking for feedback and all of that. And then we're going to sit down and basically the design team is going to sit down and figure out how Oracles really, what their role in the whole setting is. I mean, there's a difference between what your rules role is and what your lore role is. So.
Now that leads me to a follow-up. A lot of how you've described this book is that it was definitely part of the original plan, quote unquote, in the opening volley. And a lot of this was obviously written before the public got to see the rules, and you haven't seen how it, has affected by colliding with the enemy. Which of the books do we start seeing post-launch development?
You will see that pretty much with the stuff coming out next year, I think. And with the exception of course, Gods and Magic, which is kind of bled into the next year. But Game Master Guide, for example, certainly with the Adventures in the Extinction Curse, and absolutely with the next one after Gods and Magic coming along.
The one you guys just announced, Lost Omen Legends, will have post-release development?
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about the Oracle. In first edition, the Oracle was, it had a Pantheon. It wasn't a single deity caster, whereas it seems like it's moving a little bit more towards the Cleric side of things in second edition, at least based on what I saw in the playtest. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that worshipping a Pantheon is just not going to be a thing in the future of Pathfinder?
Actually, we have rules in here for how you worship pantheons. And in fact, we've quantified in Gods and Magic how a cleric can worship a pantheon. And the short version of it is that if you pick a pantheon, say that pantheon is Desna, Shelyn, and Sarenrae, you would pick one of those deities to be the primary deity. And then you would also so you would follow that deity's, edicts and anathemas. And then you would also follow the edicts and anathemas for the entire pantheon. So it would if you worship a pantheon in your cleric, you've got more rules to follow. A better example of that would be the God Claw is a specific pantheon we have. And the God Claw includes a bunch of diverse deities, but in particular, it's got Iomedae and Asmodeus in the same kind of grouping. And that's sort of weird because they're enemies. And so how does it work if you are a cleric who worships the God Claw? You would pick one of those deities and say you picked Iomedae. And then you would basically have to follow all of Iomedae's edicts and anathemas and make sure that you are, doing what she wants you to do and not doing what she doesn't want you to do. And then you would also have to follow the God Claw's edicts and anathemas. And I don't remember them exactly, but if the God Claw had one that was like, make sure you rule people with an iron fist, that's not really Iomedae flavored. So that edict would be one that you wouldn't have to do. So it kind of gives you a little bit of area to kind of customize what sort of roles and beliefs your cleric is in. Clerics are still mostly going to be single deity worshipers. I've always kind of seen them as like cosplaying their deities because they're super fans. And my personal preference for oracles is that they would be more into like worshiping either pantheons or ideas. Like an oracle could be like, there's this weird tree stump that whispers to me. It's not a god, but there's certainly a whispering tree stump. That character could be an oracle. How that actually works out in the rules, that's something that we're still going to be working. I haven't actually been involved in a lot of the work on that side of things yet, because it's just getting the raw rules tested. My influence and feedback and all that is going to happen on the other side of that playtest. And that's at the point where I'm going to be sitting down with the design team in theory, and we'll be talking like, how does this work into the setting? For things like witches, it's already obvious. We've got all of the stuff going on up in Irison. For oracles, it's a little bit more nebulous. So not quite sure how it'll figure it out. I would like them to be more like the iconic sort of Pantheon worshippers. I think that's a really cool role for them.
Yeah, ever since I saw HBO's Rome, I really opened up to the idea that it's like, oh, you don't always worship the god of death just when somebody cuts you off in traffic.
Exactly.
So
something you said earlier that go ahead, Brian.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of non-cleric-y rules would be involved here. How non, obvious classes would interface with their beliefs in religion. And we saw a taste of that with rituals. What are the rules in here that say my fighter or my rogue might want to interface?
Alchemist.
It's really boils down at that point for spells. You can be any of the spellcasting classes and get access to the spells. Magic items, you just have to find them. Anybody can grab up like a flaming scimitar that allows you to heal people when you stab them or something like that. And that is in this book. I don't think that's in this book, but that would be in this book because it has ties to Saren Ray, who's one of the deities. But you don't have to be a cleric to take advantage of that. And it also, again, boils down to the whole element of their anathemas and edicts. And there is, I believe, let me double check real quick. I think that, yeah, there are elements in here that allow you to basically not be a cleric, but still kind of worship a deity and gain benefits from that deity. And you just still have to follow the edicts and anathemas. But and it's kind of sort of like in the similar way we explore pantheons and stuff like that. It's really just sort of a taste, a hint about where we could go in the future, setting the groundwork for that. But it's really kind of an idea. At the very least, one of the ways I've always found that is the kind of the easiest way to make your character unique and yours is, even if you have, like, if you want to make a fighter and 3 other people in the group are already making fighters, you can say, well, my fighter is a worshiper of Shelyn. And that immediately gives your character a entire different route to follow for what feats they choose, what kind of fighting styles they want to do, what their alignment might be. And so if you approach it from that way, any character can pick any of these deities, and it kind of gives them an extra, background as to what to look for, how to build their character.
More fantastic armor too for a fighter.
Yeah, absolutely.
King of Rock in chat suggests that there would be deific obedience feats.
There could be, sure. You could do a bunch of feats that basically, I mean, we've done stuff like that before, where if you worship a deity, you can gain access to a certain number of feats. And that's also, I mean, just inherent in the way that the 2nd edition rules work. We've got the commonalities. You could have an entire category of feats that are uncommon or even rare, but if you worship a specific deity, they might basically unlock for you, and you could then gain access to those options and so forth. For this book, that, again, since this book was written relatively early in the life cycle, and we didn't have everything nailed down, one of the reasons we were able to get this book out was to lean more heavily on the lore side. But we certainly could do a series of like deific themed feats, for sure, certainly.
Well, speaking of the lore side, will this book be addressing some of the opinions or changes that the gods may have had given the moving forward of the timeline? Will we see any updates?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we'll be figuring in every book that we do going forward. We're going to be including new information, new elements and such like that. For this book, that really is going to show up when we get to deities like Cassandali or Nocticula, who have come to power as a result of adventure paths. There's other ones like Iomade has had a lot of stuff going on with the World Wound closing, and then the Glorious Reclamation attempting a coup and Cheliax and failing and all this stuff. You'll see bits and pieces of that in the book kind of spread throughout the place. It's going to organically, not all of them have it. Some of them, some deities like Rovagud, for example, is like just same old, more monsters, great. So it's in there here and there, but it's not a primary goal of this book to make sure that every single deity has a new element going on. I think one of the big valuable parts about something like this is that the rules have changed so dramatically that it's helpful. It's to have like touchstones from the previous editions that still make sense, that are still recognizable.
We're going to see any fun cults in the book? Maybe the Whispering Way?
The Whispering Way, I don't think is in here. In part because we just did Tyrant's Grasp, which had a lot of information about the Whispering Way. And I'm just double checking to make sure that I just said that it isn't here, but it is, and it isn't. We've got God Calling in here. We got the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. We've got the Green Faith. We've got Shoanti Animism. So we've got a lot of stuff in here that is really kind of in different ways that you can explore faith in the setting. So yeah, whether or not they're fun, I guess you'll have to decide on your own when you see them.
I
think they're fun.
You mentioned Shoanti Animism. The Summoner's not in here in the game yet, and that played a really big role there. How are they presented in the book?
Actually, I think the Sarkoran stuff is more the God calling. We put that one in there specifically because we wanted to address something that is still in the world but is not supported currently by a specific character class. And the reason we did that was to let people know that if you wanted a character that was into God calling and all that stuff, that's still in the game, even if the summoner isn't currently in the game. We're going to be looking at the Advanced Player's Guide. Those are 4 classes that used to be in the game that weren't, but are again. We're going to be doing more classes in the future. We might do the summoner at some point. We might not. We might find another role for him. But we wanted to make sure that material is still in the setting for people either that liked it before or that lets us build on it in the future.
Both Descriptivist and Chiamore would like to know about Arshea.
As in, do they want to know if Arshea is in this book?
Descriptivist said, Psst, can you tell us about Arshea? And Chiamore says, is Arshea in the book? What about a quick taste if they are?
Arshea is in the book, 2 paragraphs.
Well, hey.
Arshea is one of the Imperial Lords we specifically call out in there's I think 4 or 6 pages of just Imperial Lords, and they each get a couple of paragraphs talking about what their story is and all that. So it's probably in that case, if you're already a big fan of Arshea or whoever, that information is probably not going to be new to you, but it will be. You'll be glad to see it in there because it's proof that we're still going to be doing stuff with that character in the future. Their position in the setting, being in the ground rules deities book, makes them by default more important to the setting.
I actually don't know anything about Arshea. Why?
Arshea is an Imperial Lord that's about sexual freedom, and it's really in a game where we've got so much baggage from history, where it's there's so many creatures like Lamias and succubi and vampires that basically boil down to women are scary. A character like Arshea turns that on its head and says, no, actually, women aren't scary. And more to the point, Arshea is like this androgynous character that's your gender identity isn't supposed to be scary. And it's informed a lot by just modern sensibilities, but it's also a character that is specifically in the game to make it more welcoming to a wider range of gamers, really. So
nice. Last question I have from chat for now. King of Rock, who's rocking it with the questions. Hey. Will we get the 7 holy poems of the Gorum Kagat?
Nope.
All right.
Deep dives like that don't really work in a book that's supposed to be like this. Actually, let me look to Gorum's page. Let me make sure, because we have every one of these have little aphorisms and stuff like that on the side. And Gorum's little side thing there is basically a sort of an icon somebody's made out of an old piece of armor that they jammed a bunch of swords into the neck hole and kind of made this little eidolon of Gorum type thing. Not a summoner eidolon, but a little altar statue thing. So no Gorum deep dive poetry in this one.
One of the things you said earlier that I liked the sound of, that there are up and coming gods.
Mm-hmm.
So who are some of the up and coming gods, if you can reveal that? And how does one become an up and coming god?
The 2 that really come to my mind, because they're the ones that I was most involved with, would be Cassandali, who is there's going to be a little bit of spoilers here for Adventure Path. So just warning there.
Okay.
In Iron Gods, one of the elements in Iron Gods is that you recover this artificial intelligence, and by going through that campaign, your group has the option of basically using that artificial intelligence, plug it into this divinity drive set up on the spaceship, and basically custom coding yourself a new deity for the setting. And that deity is Cassandra. She has become part of this deity in the Starfinder setting, part of this tripartite deity, triune. And so it made sense that since she's obviously got stuff going on in Starfinder, and she was kind of a big deal in Iron Gods, it made sense that her transition into a full-on deity should happen in this book. And so she's got a relatively new group of worshippers and all that. She's not widespread; it's mostly stuck in Numeria, but it's on the move. And so that's one example. Another one would be Nocticula, who for much of first edition was a demon lord associated with like darkness and assassinations and stuff like that. And as part of several elements that I was seeding throughout several adventure paths that culminated in Return of the Runelords, she basically she ascended from her demonic nature and became a full-fledged deity of artists, midnight, and exiles. And so she's more of a chaotic neutral deity at this point, who's one of the big patrons of New Thassalon, and kind of is like the patron of artists who need to have somebody protect them because the art they're doing is challenging the status quo, I guess. So those are two examples of deities that are like kind of transitioning into a bigger role. Erasni is another great example. She had a big role to play in Tyrant's Grasp. She's got a bigger role to play in the setting at this point as well. So deities that are in the first edition of the game maybe didn't have a big role to play, didn't really ever show up in any of the Interstate Gods or previous versions of Gods of Magic, but are now so important that they're one of the next 20 that we talk about after the core 20.
You mentioned Starfinder, and Starfinder has the same more or less pantheon of Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were designing this book, how often did you look and see like what is the status quo in Starfinder, and how can we start that journey in the Pathfinder side of things?
It pretty much started and ended with Cassandra, because she's basically a god of artificial intelligence and robots and stuff like that. So there had to be sort of a transition between the two games there. But we have different teams working on Starfinder and Pathfinder, and it's already tough enough for us to keep track of all of the content and rules and everything in one game. So the creation of the gap really exists to not only allow for anything that happens in the future of Pathfinder that we haven't published yet to still be canonically true in theory for Starfinder, but it also prevents everybody who's working on Starfinder from also being an expert on Pathfinder and vice versa. So as a result, we really kind of focused on the deities that make sense for Pathfinder. And if that has any ripple effects on the Starfinder, that's really for the Starfinder team to look at this book. And if they see something that they are inspired by, they can run with that in that direction.
I have to say, I am actually really glad that Cassandra is going to be getting a lot more treatment with second edition going forward, because when, she was such a big deal with Iron Gods, and then when Starfinder came out, it seemed like the perfect chance to really feature her, but then she gets warped into Triune as part of this trifecta, and so a lot of her unique identity was lost because it was mixed in with these two other gods that we aren't familiar with. We don't have a history, but as a community, we have such a history with Cassandra, and I was really worried that we were going to lose the chance to see what the results of such a massive influence on the world that Iron Gods would have had.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why she's in here. I mean, apart from the fact that she's in Starfinder, of course, she went from basically being an artificial intelligence in like a little data pad to being 1/3 of a deity. And you're absolutely right. The whole life cycle that she had as her own deity to become important and powerful enough to earn a place in that tripartite deity, it's nothing is going on there. Nobody knows about it. So that's why we chose her as one of those deities to be in this book as one of the up and coming new deities of the setting. Gives her a chance to establish herself as her own thing.
With the new kids
we are coming up on time, so I do want to invite anyone that's in chat to get in any last questions. Go ahead, Perm.
With the new kids on the block, are you guys putting a little gold star next to them to feature them more in upcoming content?
Not intentionally. one of the things that kind of happens is whenever we've got all of our developers and each one of them has like whether they're doing a module or an adventure path or a Lost Omens book or something like that. One of the things that I find really valuable is that if a developer or the author, and in a lot of cases the same person, but really the developer is the person that comes up with the idea for the product, creates the outline, and is going to be working on it. The more passionate they are about that topic, the better the book is going to be. And so it really depends on what deities they're interested in. I mean, that's when Luis and Eleanor were working on this. One of the things that I really wanted to make sure happened was that deities, be they old deities that never really got much play in the game or brand new ones, I wanted to make sure that they got several in here that are, people may not recognize them. They might be new, they might be obscure, but they give the game so much more interesting, options because it's new people adding new content to the game, and they're adding content that they're really excited about, and it shows through in the text.
A couple of quick questions from chat. First one is King of Rock. Just says, Razmir?
Would be in a different book that is not about gods.
Mm-hmm. So you were just talking about, people learning the setting. So Razmir's a pretty poorly kept secret, we could say.
Right.
So how do you handle that going forward? Is it just out of the bag?
It's been out of the bag from the start. I mean, the most interesting thing about Razmir is the secret. Everything else about it is just a wizard. And so in a case like that, we basically have to trust the players and the GMs that they're going to want to do things in the game, even though they know something isn't exactly the way it is believed in world. The thing that makes it interesting, and otherwise people wouldn't know this whole story. I mean, another element would be with Minkari as the villain in Age of Ashes. He's a gold dragon, and we've been kind of really coy about what his role in the world is up until this point. And it made it really difficult talking before we got those adventures out about that adventure path because we were trying to keep it all a secret. And I don't think that's necessarily good for building excitement for the game. I think the reason people are so into Razmir, I think the reason people ask questions about him is because they know the secret. If they didn't know the secret, no one would care. So,
on a related thing, I mean, Reign of Winter, you had to spoil the secret, or else it would just be yet another cold fantasy event.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a case where it's like the most exciting thing about Reign of Winter is the fifth adventure, and it's sort of this weird sort of art you have to kind of juggle between spoiling something and teasing something is really what's going on there. And you look at movie theater trailers as the great example. You could cut any movie trailer to make it look like something. You've seen that thing on YouTube, The Shining recut as a romantic comedy, and it's brilliant. But it just is proof that like if you made a trailer that looked like that and everyone went to see it because they wanted to see movie A, they'd be traumatized, and all the people that want to be traumatized would be bored because they'd never go to see that movie. So you got to do a certain amount of secret revealing in order to get people interested.
We do have our last two questions. So first from Elf Tira says, Ashava or other ghost-focused gods?
Let me go back through here real quick. Ashava is one of the deities that I really kind of just took a liking to early on. I just like the idea that she's in here. She's got a couple of paragraphs in there in the Imperial Lore section. She's kind of a goddess that if you die off in the woods and your spirit doesn't know where to go, she'll go out and guide you to the graveyard and you'll be safe. There's also Embolic, who is one of the gods in the Elder Mythos thing that I invented for the whole thing, in part because I wanted there to be more female deities in that pantheon. There's basically none. And but also because I wanted to get one in there that had sort of more of a Pathfinder spin to it. And Embolic is a deity that is on the other side of things, where it's like she basically eats ghosts. And if you die around Embolic, your spirit's going to get eaten, and there's no death for you. It just stops, and you're done. And she's called the Empty Death because the whole idea is that she's there to eat everything that you were, and then the ghost that remains behind might be like her slave for a little bit, and then she's going to eat it. And so She's got a section in here too, I believe. So there's some more stuff talking about like ghosts and spiritual elements and stuff like that. From the happy fun time side to the grim, sad, ghosts or scary side.
So appropriately enough, the last question is for Roll for Combat, saying pronounce Iomade.
Iomade. Hey. This is another thing too. Is like once you say it out loud, that immediately makes me think of it. I always say Iomade. So Io as in the planet, and then Made, Iomade. But then I have to stop and think about it, and it's like that's you get people asking questions about specific deities like Saran Ray. If you misspell it, it looks like Saran Ray, which looks like Saran Wrap, which is goofy. But Saran Ray is doesn't sound like that at all. Nagorber is another one that people seem to have a lot of trouble sounding out or something like that.
Well, geez.
Yeah, so it's and then there's other ones that we intentionally make hard to say because that's part of the flavor of the deity. So Nagorber, for example, is a god of secrets, and the proper pronunciation of his name is kind of a secret.
This is why you all need to have like a new show on your channel, Pedantic Mondays, where you just pronounce the names of all the things in your books.
That's not as we could do that. Everybody, I mean, there's different ways of pronouncing we have to do that, as part of our job when we're doing things like audio dramas or video games or stuff like that. And, people are like, well, we've got this whole section talking about Grotus. How do you say Grotus? And that's how you say Grotus. But it dovetails out of there too. It's like, what is the accent of somebody from Cheliax as opposed to somebody from, Taldor as opposed to somebody from Brevoy?
I want to know.
Bad British.
Are like, that's a weird way to delve into things, because you don't want to say basic, because they would have accents, but you don't want to say they're French because then it sounds off. So you have to come up with new accents. It's weird. It's a weird, unexpected element of licensing stuff out. It's fun, but Elfira
in chat does want you to know that they're very grateful because you did answer quite a few of their questions.
That's always good to hear. You see something you like, please let us know what we're doing right. People a lot of times will be really quick to tell us what we do wrong, and that's important to know too. But if we don't know what we're doing right, we can't obsess over it, I guess is what I'm getting at. So that's important to know.
So we have a couple of minutes before your hard deadline. Is there anything you want people to get their eyes on? Anything that needs more attention than it's getting? Pathfinder or otherwise?
Pathfinder or otherwise? Oh, geez. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I would definitely say keep an eye out for Extinction Curse, which is coming out in a couple of months. That's the next adventure path. That's the adventure path where you play circus people fighting demon dinosaurs. And that's pretty much the most awesome idea for an adventure path I've heard in a long time. I've been pushing Ron, if you're listening, run adventure paths, trying to get somebody to run it here so that I can play in it. But that's something that I'm really excited. And the inside covers of this have like circus posters and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's the thing that I want people to really look for. I guess that and grab the Game Master Guide when it's out in a few more months after that. The Game Master Guide really, in first edition, it was more of like, here's an advice type thing. Here's how to handle problem players. Here's what sort of snacks to bring. Here's a bunch of NPCs. The new version of the Game Master Guide is more important for a game master than the core rulebook, I think.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's the game that if you want to know how to build a trap or a monster or a spell, if you want to know how to, run something that is not just a fight, like the PCs decide that they're going to run a tavern or they're going to sneak into the king's palace and look for something. All of that information is in the Game Master Guide. And it's really, we could have called it the Running Adventures Guide. And that's not as, not as cool sounding, but it's really an important tool for game masters. That's where cursed items are going to be. That's where artifacts are going to be. There's just a lot of stuff in that book that basically makes the game master able to make their own adventures.
Now, when you say run a tavern, you mean the tavern is some kind of tavern golem and you have to run a combat with it, right?
Yeah, of course. Tavern golems. The Rusty Dragon is just it's a transformer. It'll change into whatever it needs to do.
Is it?
Yeah, it just never does it because it's good aligned and it doesn't want to transform when people are inside it because it gets mangled and squished.
And somebody's always there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, James. This kind of flew by, so I hope that you got in everything that you were hoping to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online or anything that? Anything like that?
The best place to find me online is just here at paizo.com. I do that Ask James Jacobs thread. If you have any questions for me, I check into that pretty much every day, and that's probably the best place to get to me.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot, James. Take care. Hopefully, we'll see you this con season.
Yep. See you later.
We'll be right back with some news and some banter right after this.
Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news.
And we're back.
In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about all that's happening for the Pathfinder role-playing game from Paizo, from third-party publishers, from licensees. Basically, if it's of interest to you, the fans, we try and cover it here. The big news is not the most breaking news. It's that the APG playtest is continuing. And like James Jacobs said, it is concluding soon. The last day to get your feedback in on the SurveyMonkey links that you can find on Paizo's blog is Friday, December 6th at 4 p.m. Pacific. Param, I know you and I just had a chance to play test a couple of the APG classes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you write your feedback yet?
I have not. No.
Me neither.
I am terrible at paperwork, but do not follow my poor example. Get your feedback in now. But if you want to learn some of our thoughts on it, maybe do so after your feedback so we don't bias you too much. Or, listen to us and get completely biased. Your call there. We like it either way.
Yeah, I thought we were about to go into a little bit.
Oh, okay. Then you could okay, so get your feedback in now, pause the episode, then do your feedback, then come back, and we're going to bias the crap out of you. What I mean is, if you really want to listen to some cool stuff about our opinions and us actually giving these things a kick in the tires, on Monday, we just released a special actual play episode where a whole lot of us under Guillaume Luis Loza was able to playtest a bunch of these classes through a very short adventure and really shake the dust off of them, see what they work. We played at level 3, not level 1, so that we could play with some of the higher level toys.
Higher level.
Technically, it's a true statement. It's higher than 1.
All right, can't argue with that. Yeah, I played an Oracle. You played the Witch.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of swashbucklers, and Alex played the last class, which is the Investigator.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think we all had fun, there was some really good insight towards the end, especially some of V's observations about the swashbuckler and its dependence on strength when you would expect it to have more dependence on dex.
Yeah, I was really, I agree with V there. There needs to be some sort of special rule for swashbucklers. Like rogues can get dex to damage, swashbucklers should be able to get dex
to athletics.
Well, athletics, I was going to say tricky nonsense, but athletics works as well, which is functionally how they need to function.
Yeah, because you want your swashbuckler to be Errol Flynn, not Lou Ferrigno.
So... King of Rock asks, did I feel like all I did as the witch was hex the crap out of peeps? That's what it felt like in 1E. And no, it sure didn't feel like that in the playtest. We're just really going to have to get down into it, ain't we?
Yeah, let's go get a little bit of time because it was something that we just did. And let's try not to spoil too much about what happens in the adventure.
Right.
But yeah, get into some of our thoughts.
Okay, so at least let's start with the ones we directly played. Me and you directly played. I played the Witch. I ended up going with the life version of the Witch, which meant one of the things that surprised me when I read the playtest is that Witch. When they announced all the new thing and they announced occult was going to be the new spell class, I'm like, oh, that's obvious. Witch is just going to be the occult prepared spellcaster. That's how this is going to work. And no, that ain't how it works. Witch is kind of like the prepared sorcerer, if that makes sense for the game.
Nope.
Okay, so you know how in 2nd edition the sorcerer gets to have, depending on what they choose at low level, they get to pick what school type they cast on, what tradition, arcane, primal, occult, or divine. And it's like that with the witch too, except witches ain't allowed to be divine. They can be arcane, occult, or primal. And so when I chose the Life Witch, because I kind of looked at what everybody was building and didn't expect that you would play a very healy Oracle, Ryan. Just I had suspicion. So I made a
You know what? Had you not been healing, I had plenty of healing opportunities still left.
And yeah, I was surprised because I kind of expected you to go like, well, a lot of the way you did go with like really bad heavy Oracle. So I made a very supporty witch. So I went with the Life Witch, which gave me a hex that basically just put regeneration on everybody, or well, one at a time, which was super fun and flavorful. But otherwise, the witch played like a druid. Like I really felt like I was playing a druid, because it was the primal spell casting list, and because I think this is twofold. One, the hexes just really wasn't super important for my character, and I looked through all the hexes, and it isn't like because they're focus points, you can really only put one out in a combat, so you do not spam them. You cannot spam them. And the hexes weren't super dominant in how the character was going to play. I bet you could build them that way, and I expect when the full book comes out, there'll be lots of options leaning hard on those hexes, or even higher level. That will become a more viable option. But at least for the option I had, it was more like toss it out and then get onto my normal spellcasty ways, which, because we did not have a custom spell list full of new witch spells that I have every reason to suspect will be in the final book, very witchy themed spells added to the spellcasting lists, it just was like me playing, like I said, a druid, because basically after the hex, I just had access to the same spellcasting rules I've been playing with all this time with my druid character.
I definitely know what King of Rock is talking about when he says that the one witch would just spam hexes.
Oh yeah.
Tina played a high level witch in one of my campaigns, and she barely cast any spells. She did the one where she did Vomit Swarm, and she did the one where you leave a bunch of bones behind and you become a swarm. And otherwise, she was just hexing turn after turn.
Yeah, one of my players played a Winter Witch through Reign of Winter, which was super thematic and fun because of how well it tied into the storyline. But about the second book in, we had to have a conversation about, hey, I want you to still keep playing your character and having fun, but we both acknowledge that your character is capable of shutting down the entire game and making the game not fun for the other players, because they need to be able to do fun things and succeed as well. And your character has the full capability of soloing this adventure path. So please don't. And so she held back and just didn't. Basically, she just used her lesser options during most of the combats to let the others shine. And then I would always recognize when she realized, well, it's time because we're going to die. And then full witchy poo comes out, and just really, they were never in any danger because witchy poo could always come out anytime it was needed. And when it did happen, it was just hex, 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 the battle's over.
Now, I played an Oracle. I played a Battle Oracle, and I enjoyed the heck out of my Battle Oracle.
Yeah, it was fun watching you be very battly with the Oracle, too. I was like, oh, we got a tank. And the tank is very squishy, but not at all squishy.
Yeah, Chiamore in chat says they have issues with the Battle Oracle, which I am surprised by. So, yeah, and I wasn't sure how this was going to go because I played an Oracle in first edition in Hell's Rebels, and I loved the character, but did not enjoy the play experience of it. And so coming into second edition, it's like, all right, well, you know how I feel about casters. This isn't just how I feel. This is just how my headspace when I'm playing these characters. And the Oracle is not that different from a Cleric, which was just my worst second edition play experience. Not for any problem with the game, but just simply incompatibility between me and the class. None of that was here for the Oracle. In fact, I enjoyed playing the Oracle more than I've enjoyed playing 2E Marshals. Because with 2E Marshals, I'm finding I don't know what to do with my third action. I don't want to make the third attack, and it just feels weird a lot of times that I'm squatting, whereas I never felt like I didn't have 3 actions worth of things that I can do. And often coming up on my turn, I would be looking at the battlefield, I would be looking at who's ahead of me, and it's just like, all right, so if this situation happens, then I've got these 3 actions that I can do. But if this situation happens, this other one, then I've got this other suite of power. And it never felt like my resources were completely going to be tapped either way, that I could have a straightforward tactic and a more complicated tactic and a more magic-y tactic. And I was really beefy. A third level character with 40 hit points is tough. And one of the reasons that I was so hardy was because I was playing a dwarf who has a charisma penalty, charisma being the key ability of the Oracle. And yet that didn't hamper me. I was not playing spells that really needed DCs. Oh, Param?
You didn't buy out that penalty?
No, I didn't bother because I focused more on my physical stats, my strength and my con, with a little bit of thrown into whiz. And that was fine. I was okay having a 16 charisma and otherwise being a capable fighter, a capable frontline warrior. And then the spells made me more than capable. It made me situationally adaptive and a really fun way of bringing out flavor a lot of the time, especially when it came to the curse, which was that if I use my I forget the name of it, but anyway, the curse specific spells, if I cast those, they work like focus spells, but instead of spending a focus point, I advance my curse. And the low level penalty of the curse is actually almost non-existent. It's you take a -2 penalty unless you attack this round. Okay, I was attacking every single round. Then the second one is you take a -2 penalty. If you attack this round, it's only a -1 penalty, but you get fast healing. And it's like, that's even, I could see benefits of this curse advancing. But then if I had continued to do these spells just willy-nilly, just doing them whatever, then eventually I would have cursed out and fallen unconscious for 8 hours, which would have been the balance of the adventure. So there was some give and some take there, and it was fun to play around with it and to push my limits more than I expected I would be pushing them. But the spells that I had, because you're usually supposed to choose between one of 2 options, but I took the feat that lets me take both because both of them were really cool. Which I thought I had right in front of me, but no, when I'm looking at a class feature. So I got Athletic Rush, which gave me advanced speed and it bumps to my stats, and Weapon Surge, which just made my weapon more powerful. I ended up using both of them, which, I don't know, it was fun and exciting. And I really, Revelations, thank you, King of Rock. It was, I would say, my most fun 2E experience.
I mean, I was definitely enjoying watching your dwarf just sprint across battlefields and wreck face, and I was like, that is not an oracle, but it is wonderful.
Well, no, but that's not true, because the oracle did have the capacity to be a frontline warrior. The metal mystery in first edition basically turned the oracle into Colossus. And that was actually the direction I was going. I came up with my concept before I dove into the rules. And so when I saw that there was no metal mystery or, the equivalent, it was like, okay, there is a broad one. There is the battle one, which is if you want to do the buffing yourself warrior. There's the fire one, which is if you want to just be a shotgun oracle. And life was at the third one, if you want to be the Healy oracle. So they had the 3 bases covered with the playtest mysteries. We know that there's going to be plenty more mysteries when it gets out in the advanced player's guide. But yeah, I was able to play the oracle that I wanted to. This was also my character creation wise, like it was so easy to just stick to my concept, which was really exciting. Really, other than the nagging feeling that maybe having 16 charisma is not going to work out for me, and that feeling ended up being wrong. That was really the only time that I was like, I really don't know what to do. I really don't know if the choice I'm making is the right one.
So let's talk about...
I got a mall.
Yes, you did have a mall. It was great. Also, let's talk about the 2 classes we didn't play. And okay. I think one of my favorite classes, and I think it might be a lot of people's favorite classes, given the amount of them that tried to play in their game on Monday, was Swashbuckler. I think it definitely is in the best place of all of the playtest classes. I think it really sells its concept when you read the class very well. It took what was kind of a clunky set of rules, the panache system, which was really just the grit system reflavored in first edition, and then made it the state of panache and made you constantly want to try to be in that state to make your character act better. And in a lot of ways, it took what was a common joke and criticism of the Pathfinder playtest and Pathfinder second edition when it came out, that the initiative system was just going to encourage people, especially rogues, to just do the most ridiculous things to try to get their best skill as their initiative check instead of perception, which, you know, in their perception check is usually their best initiative check because rogues are really good at that now. But they turned that into actually the system for the swashbuckler. You're very much encouraged to do ridiculous nonsense in order to jump through a window. You are encouraged to make bad choices because your character would. Because your character is a show-off or a braggart or something else. And it codified a meta joke of the game in such a beautiful way that all of our swashbucklers, especially V's, the character she was playing, the Golden Phoenix, was just going bonkers in every perfect and entertaining way to try to get those bonuses and get herself into a state of panache, which you do by either using a certain skill as initiative, which means, like for the acrobatic one, you want to swing from chandeliers, run down banisters, something to get acrobatics to trigger as your initiative in order to start the combat in panache, or you want to do something crazy with acrobatics during the turn. That might be suboptimal, so we constantly saw our swashbucklers trying to vault over people and do backflips in combat, which is a tactically terrible idea, but worked out wonderfully for the flavor of the character in the game, because now we have swashbucklers doing weird freaking backflips in combat just to get into the state of panache and then get all their stuff buffed up.
Yeah, if he was playing the gymnast and her theme was that she was a luchador halfling, and so it totally makes sense that any combat she enters into, she does so flippingly. And Dustin was playing, what is it, the braggart?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the name? Anyway, he specialized in a whip. Neither of them had a rapier, to my knowledge, or no,
Right.
He had did Dustin have an offhand rapier?
He had an offhand rapier, but he was built around the whip. But then he switched in the middle of the adventure for reasons we won't spoil.
Right. But it surprised me that right out of the gates, neither of our swashbucklers are using the rapier heavily. Although I did appreciate that Dustin had a buckler, which feels like it should be an important part of being a swashbuckler.
Mm-hmm. And also, I kind of almost criticized us for, we were wanting to playtest these classes, and then none of us played what we would consider a normal character for those classes.
That's why would you play a normal character if you're trying to stress test the system? Like, this is a normal oracle for me because this is the kind of character I would have played. Like, if I just played what I thought they wanted me to play, that's not what I would ever play in my own campaign.
I just think in a lot of ways, like, at least making sure the expected behavior works is also important, not just finding where we can break it. Like, is the expected experience entertaining and fun? If that isn't true, then they have a lot more to address than, well, if we do this certain thing, then this character doesn't work or is super broken.
But the expected thing is the thing that they can control for much more easily, and they can play test in their own, because a lot of times the expected thing is more in the designer's head than what's on the page. When it's on the page, it goes in somebody else's head, and if they're looking at it, it's like, all right, swashbuckler is clearly really good with a great axe, and so I'm going to use all these abilities with my great axe. And then you send them that feedback, and they're like, huh, probably shouldn't be so good with a great axe. I don't think it actually is. This is just an example of something that would definitely not be going to type.
It'd be so ironic if the release for swashbucklers, they're all great axe specialists now. And while I agree with you that's important, I just think, like, it's also important to make sure the base works, because if you test for the base and it doesn't work, that's such a bigger problem. Like, it would be a problem if the only way to make a good swashbuckler was to specialize in great axe.
Well, and I think that's what V's discovering, that by doing leading into combat maneuvers,
Mhm.
which is one of the directions that the swashbuckler even encourages, you have to have a high strength because combat maneuvers are tied to athletics. Athletics is strength based. And she was playing someone that should have been able to, do head scissors and throw people around with her legs and stuff, and use finesse, which is, and she was failing because she built a finesse character for a finesse class and was penalized for being weak,
and
physically weak, not having a high strength.
And it's actually a bigger problem in second edition than it ever was in first edition, having a low stat or a lower stat, because in second edition, in first edition, you always had like a bunch of feat options or skill options. You could escape the curve even if you had like a 2 or 3 less primary stat than the action called for. There were a lot of ways to navigate that situation. Whereas in second edition, the math is so tight that a +3 bonus is so much more important than it was in first edition. And having a -3, effectively a -3 to your primary action, or what you're trying to do most of the time in combat, is like a 15% failure rate.
Are you saying -3? Do you know that that's what V had?
Well, no, I was just assuming the traditional stat array where in second edition, where if it's not a stat you're prioritizing, it usually has a 12 or a 14 as opposed to a 18 or eventually 20.
Okay, so I thought you were saying that she had like a 7 strength and her modifier was -3. Okay, so the swing was 3 from being an expert at something to being
And that's a big
deprioritized.
deal.
I
That's
get
a
it.
huge deal
Yeah.
in second edition. And in fact, it's one of the things I disagreed with Alex about when he in his final talk about the investigator. That I get why having the kicker dice or the D4 would have been more fun, but the +1s and +2s in second edition are a big deal. Like, that's a huge deal in this game. It's also why I vehemently disagree with him about nimble dodge, as he does.
I don't think we are ever going to be able to have a podcast without bringing up nimble dodge, at least not for a while. Not for the remainder of 2019.
Today, I'm out, but man, we're back in it. Like, this is one of the reasons I kind of like this time in the Pathfinder fandom is we're back in those early days. We're having these basic how the game works talks is still valuable because it's not a solved equation. Whereas D20, as much as I love D20, after 20 years of playing in D20, a lot of those answers are solved equations. We know the answers to how these affect the game because we've had 2 decades of experience to draw from.
I don't know about that. But anyway, I do much prefer playtesting classes to playtesting a system. That there's so much more foundation there. You don't have to be questioning every aspect of everything you're doing. Like, if I did something poorly, did I just roll poorly? Is my character built poorly, or is it the game? Like, there was too much going on during the playtest of the system. Whereas now we've got a system that works, that we're happy with, and now it's about characters that are a little different from the ones we've been playing up till now, which has still only been a few months. So it's not like we've all got thousands of characters under our belt. But even then, at least in my case, playing a character that got me out of my shell and seeing other ways that 2E can be played was satisfying. It was fun.
Yeah, I think that all 4 classes need some work. That's pretty some more than others, but I am.
What are you saying about my Oracle?
Your Oracle was awesome.
So I honestly do. I am honest curious. What do you think the Oracle needs? Because I could see the other 3 classes, but the Oracle seems to be working exactly the way I think it's supposed to.
Okay, I don't have any thoughts on the Oracle.
Okay.
Just being general so I didn't get a hate train.
Okay, go ahead.
But 3 of the classes I think definitely need some work, but I don't think any of them are in dire straits. I can see from the discussion on the forums that this is not I'm not alone in seeing some of these issues. And a lot of the holes that need filling are obvious holes that they need content that a 20-page PDF can't provide us with. They need the full APG worth of support to grow into their full potential. So I'm definitely hopeful that these classes will land on their feet. Swashbuckler needs a bit of changes. Investigator just needs math looked at. and Witch just needs a lot more flavor that can only be provided by lots more pages.
Yeah, we didn't really go into the investigator. I expected it to be better and to be a more prominent part of the party, whereas it felt like, Alex would start a case and then it would be a lot more in the background than I was expecting it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like that it was able to give its case bonus to us as if they
Super
were
important.
leading, like they were leading this investigation, and that definitely felt like, oh, we are helping Alex solve this case because he is the expert. But a lot of times I expected that expert to be a little more expert than it was. I expected it to be stronger in the investigative aspects of the skill checks, whereas the math of the game is so very tight that basically anybody could choose those skills and be as investigative as that. As long as you have a high wisdom score, you could basically punch at the same weight class that the investigator was punching at.
I also, when I was reading over the investigator, I was like, okay, it doesn't need an investigator or mystery adventure, even though most adventures will have some kind of aspect. It felt like it found a way to turn any adventure into a little bit of a mystery for that class.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it just didn't feel like it was working the same way I envisioned it when it got to the table.
I was impressed at how well it was doing in combat. Like, I did not expect it to do that well in combat.
I don't remember specifics about combat, so I'm sure it was fine. I just can't recall any specific examples.
Oh, they were landing big damage hits, but by using the recall knowledge feat. The recall knowledge action basically was what granted them their version of sneak attack, which totally fits in with the theme of the character.
Yeah.
And then they were landing really big crits when they hit.
So, Param, your homework this weekend.
I have
Report that
homework?
playtest feedback. Yes.
Oh, I also have turkey to eat.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
All right. You have until Tuesday to get the feedback in.
I will definitely get my feedback in before Tuesday.
Yeah, I hope I remember to do it too.
I also have PFS to run on Saturday, so I've got a very busy week.
When do you do the bulk of your Thanksgiving celebration? Is it Thursday?
It's
Okay.
Thursday. And it's not like a big multi thing. Actually, my whole family has already taken off without me. I stood behind so I could do this with y'all. Awesome time. Actually, I love doing this with y'all. So I was very glad I did not have to bow out or cancel last minute or anything horrible like that.
That would have been 2 episodes in a row without your Param.
I can't do that. Basically, you would just be confirming the rumors of my demise. I mean, how well did you know that those pictures of Owens were actually taken recently?
I didn't question it.
No, because I missed that episode, and then immediately after, it was the episode where V takes over my editing duties on Starfinder.
Okay. I hadn't put that connection, but yeah.
And I guess we should put I do want to put the fears to rest. Like, gang, I'm not disappearing from the network or going to be making less appearances on the network. The Starfinder move is to free me up to do something else so that I have time to do other things.
Did you actually see people saying stuff, or are you just imagining that people could be making those connections?
No, there was some comments about, oh no, I'm going to miss Param and stuff. It's like, you will still see me. I'm on both actual plays. I'm on this show. There's another show that we're working on. So I will have to be stepping back from Starfinder for a little bit. And thank goodness that Owen stepped up to fill that role. That's super exciting and such a great episode to come right out of the gate with, too.
That Calm episode was solid.
My gosh,
came
so
in
great.
Really important time, too.
Yeah, and Calm is something that needs the hype. I mean, in my just a very brief Starfinder tangent, is like Starfinder really needs Calm to land solid, or else I really worry that the drought of content that game has had is going to long term affect the ability for people to find games for it. And so super glad to see that was a great episode. Also, my thoughts on Calm. Great freaking book. Fantastic freaking book. Exactly what the game needed. And that's my entire thoughts on that I'm going to put on a Pathfinder focused podcast.
All right. King of Rock wants to know what you're running this weekend.
I'm going to be, I forget the name of it. It's 1-0.
Is it Trailblazers Bounty?
Yes.
He said his favorite from last weekend was Trailblazers Bounty.
That's exactly what I'm running. I'm running it on Saturday for my, bi-weekly Pathfinder Society game. It's awesome. I'm glad to hear it's awesome because my players... Actually, I have such a great Pathfinder Society group. They're such a wonderful group of people. And they just love really diving into the roleplay aspects of their characters. And PF2 has been very rewarding for diving into the role-playing aspect of your characters because it took a page out of Starfinder Society's book, which was just build this really strong core cast of personalities that you get to interact with over and over and over again. And whereas Pathfinder Society built, especially in the early couple of years, spread out the personalities of it over a lot of them in a short order, so that eventually you did learn, like, Cretan Shane's awesome, and the Black Rose Museum is a really weird place we're going to keep coming back to. But it took a lot longer for that familiarity to pay off, to come back a season after season to get the part 2s and learn about this NPC and what they did. And you would only see them for 3 or 4 adventures. Whereas in Starfinder, there's basically these 5, growing to about 7 now, key personality NPCs that you just continuously interact with. So you have that familiarity and investment in working with them or working against them, and seeing PF2 take up that same challenge and work with these same 5 venture leaders, the new venture captains of note. There's still lots of venture captains, but the ones that we're focusing on, the faction leaders, is making for a much stronger storytelling. We're not saving the world, but my players are much more invested in the story than when they were saving the world.
Roll for Combat wants to know if you've run 1-07 Flooded King's Court.
No.
Why not?
I want to.
Well, what's keeping you?
It's next. It's the next one we run. We're running them in order.
Well, from what I hear, it's fun and goofy.
Ooh, definitely want more fun and goofy. And then after that, I'm going to run 108 and 109. And not to be snarky, I'm definitely glad it's going to be fun and goofy, and I'm looking forward to it. Fun and goofy seems to be the theme. They've just been diving into fun and goofy. Also, zombies in the same mansion.
What?
A couple of the adventures feature undead and use the same flip map. So my players are like, we're here again, fighting also more zombies? Didn't we fix this the first time?
Obviously not.
Which is so why I hate that, like, one of my characters that has that boon, it's a first edition boon. In PF2, it's coming up way more often. It's the boon's called This Place Looks Familiar, and you get a bonus to your D20 rolls if you're playing on a flip map that your character played on once before.
That's clever. Next news item. There's another Humble Bundle. It is the Pathfinder role-playing game Comics Cash.
Right.
It is from Dynamite and Paizo, I presume, although I don't see Paizo's logo there. Well, that's interesting. I think it's mostly stuff we've seen in Humble Bundles before. It's a lot of familiar comics. It's a lot of PDFs of the hardcovers from first edition. I don't think I even saw I don't think there's any second edition hardcovers unless you saw something I missed.
There's not any new second edition stuff in here. The big draw to this one is it is basically every comic. So if you want to get all the comics in one big go and read through those, and they're great. Those comics are absolutely worth reading through. So if you do not have the comics, this is a fantastic opportunity to pick them up all at once and really dig into that. But on the role-playing game side of things, it's a lot of stuff we've seen before, and it's all first edition stuff. So if you look over if you're mainly interested in rulebooks, do give this one a little bit more of a careful read over before you dump into this one. It's still a Humble Bundle. It's still dirt cheap for what you're getting. And if you don't have any first edition books and you're really wanting to invest in first edition, this is a good entry place. But the big draw is the comics. This is basically all the comics all at once for a pretty cheap price.
They did the thing they tend to do with these Humble Bundles is split up series.
Oh, no.
So you do not get
Especially
a
since-
single series unless you get $15 or more level, and then you get all the series that are
which
in here.
is extra horrible because these aren't really series. They're arcs that are chronological to each other. So you're basically skipping through the timeline if you don't get them all. So yeah, if you're not going to get them all, be very careful here. So
Right. Well, if you're getting the low level, you get Origins, and even though there is an overarching bookend, each of the Origins comics is kind of standalone.
Mm-hmm.
But like just getting parts 1 and 2 of Worldscape
No,
is
right.
not doing you any favors.
No, you want to get all of them. And like, what's the top buy? The top buy is only $25, right?
15.
15. Oh gosh, no, just no excuse. Go grab that if you want the comics. If you want the comics, grab that. And these are all e-comics. I forget what app they're delivered through. They're not. I don't think the comics are PDFs. No, the comics are going to be. Actually, I don't know. Read the specifics.
Okay.
The books from Paizo are delivered through Paizo.com. You're going to get codes to cash in at Paizo.com. The comics, I think, are PDF downloads. But I might be wrong.
It says multi-format. The comics and ebooks come in multiple file types to support many devices.
Okay, wonderful. And, but I have a little bit of extra news to tack onto this news. If you're more interested in the Pathfinder rules aspects of Humble Bundles, Eric Mona is on record saying that in a few weeks, we will probably see another Humble Bundle that's focused more on the rule book side of things that will include stuff that has not been included in the bundle before.
That's interesting because right now on the Paizo site, there is 50% off select Pathfinder products in the Celebrate Pathfinder First Edition sale. I wonder which will be the better deal.
I have no idea. The Humble Bundle is almost guaranteed to be a better deal, but you're not going to know what's in it.
Right. And also, I think the 50% off that's on the site right now includes physical stuff. So if you're not just shopping for PDFs, this is like the Humble Bundle will definitely only be PDFs.
Right. So overall, this is a great time to buy some first edition Pathfinder books if you're wanting to fill out your collections, or there's quite a many of those Pathfinder books that you will find very valuable in second edition. All the campaign setting stuff, if you're going to be playing in Galarian, that stuff is still very valuable for playing in second edition. And
modules and adventure paths could easily be converted. The Pathfinder Tales are on sale.
It is so easy to convert first edition modules. I'm actually really happy about how easy it is. And you're right. The Pathfinder Tales is wonderful, wonderful fiction, and it is one of the life's great disappointments that we are not seeing more of that released regularly.
Yeah, right now you can get a bunch of physical books for cheaper than you can get the PDFs. A lot of good ones.
And a bad one. They need warehouse space. It's usually the big motivator for big clear outs. Also, it is Black Friday coming up in a couple of days.
I think it's some combination of Black Friday and warehouse stuff. Next news item. New Pathfinder Lost Omens hardcover has been announced. Pathfinder Lost Omens Legends.
Yes. So what do we know about Legends so far? It's personality focused, NPC focused?
Well, we know that I have to do the old full disclosure that I contributed to this book and have seen the outline. And so I cannot tell you anything because I am under NDA. So you tell me what you've heard about Lost Omens Legends.
I heard that it's going to be featuring a lot of the bigger personalities in the campaign setting that are going to be getting write-ups and fun things about them. And that is about the extent of what I know about this book so far. Other than
that's about what I know.
It's got a fantastic cover, and you're not the only one of our staff that we need to disclose about that.
That's true.
I mean, obviously, Luis Loza. Actually, lots of our staff have worked on, not lots, but several of our staff have worked on this book. I do not know who or which parts, but just full disclosure time.
And we're not reviewing it right now, so it's not like we need to go into the full legality, but just the reason I cannot cover more news is because I am under NDA.
Right. So what I know about this book is that it's got a lot of personalities. We're going to find out about organizations and people that are especially big NPCs active in the area. And that's kind of cool for me. We have Tarbafon on the cover. We have the Queen of Cheliax on the cover. We have, crap, where's that cover? I had that cover ready to pull up on screen, and I have it here. Behold the cover. So, we got Archmage Jatumbe. We've got the new Pirate Queen of the Shackles. I forget her name.
Is she new? I thought she was the one with the map on her back. No, that's not her.
This is the Skull and Shackles results in this NPC.
Okay.
NPC. So yeah, so there we go. Also in the background we have not the fingers. It's the pillars and the shackles that we keep investigating in PFS.
Hold on, I can tell you because Louise came into our Discord and talked about
fixing us.
So Tessa Fairwind is the name of the member of the Pirate Council of the Shackles. The Sempet Seven Fingers. The Gloom Spires is what's behind them.
Yes. Which are some really fun, really deadly first edition PFS adventures I highly recommend playing through. I have loved every one of those I've gone through. And that's what we know. It's another one. I'm kind of... Oh, that's the wrong cover.
Due out July 2020.
Right. So...
When's Gen Con 2020?
August. It's always August, isn't it?
Yeah, it's late August that year, isn't it? No, July 30th to August 2nd. Which means that
this will probably be the Gen Con release.
Is the Gen Con release.
Yeah. Sure. So this will be the one that comes out with APG. I guess if they're having an APG, they can afford for a more lore heavy version of the Lost Omens. I kept calling it a World Guide line, but it's officially the Lost Omens line.
Yep. And is this the first book outside of, because at one point Lost Omens was called a trilogy?
Yeah, this is the first post trilogy. So the first three we just talked to James Jacobs about. Those were part of the announced launch, not launch lineup, but the initial volley of products that would come out for second editions. They were all announced at PaizoCon. We knew what they were going to be, and this is the first book after that. No, this is the first book that will be released after that. But we also know we're getting Absalom. Actually, Absalom comes out just before this. So we're getting Absalom first, then we're getting this. So two very lore-heavy Lost Omens guides in a row. And the Absalom one is important because the adventure path that comes out after Extinction Cursed takes place entirely in Absalom.
So Descriptivist in chat want to know if we... Oh, wait, where is it? Did I quote the wrong person? Have we mentioned... Oh, Owlcat's announcement. No, we haven't.
I do not know.
Sorry, I thought it said Owen's announcement. Do you know what Owlcat's announcement is?
No, I do not know. I do know that they said they were going to announce something that is basically their next project soon. I do not know what it is.
Hold on. I think I saw something in our Discord. A link thrown up to Owlcat, but I did not click on it. I am still looking in our Discord.
Oh, Combat is teasing us.
Share the news? Share the news. There we go.
Combat is teasing us. They're saying that the next AP has a froggy myth in it.
I know. He's a liar. He's playing with my emotions, and I don't appreciate it.
Honestly, I have no emotional investment in the froggy myth other than the fact that it usually has really cool artwork.
I don't understand, but I respect that you have a different opinion. It's time to announce something according to Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is the Owlcat Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
You were waiting for it for a long, long time, and now we can say that it is coming, the announcement of our next game. Yes, this is an announcement for an announcement. All right, hopefully this gets to something somewhere. It will be ready soon, so in order to help you guess the theme of our next game, we've come up with a Grail hunting. The rules are simple. There will be posts with hashtag Grail_hunting, which you have to share, like, or comment. If you are active enough and reach the necessary amount of reactions, you will uncover one or more piece of the picture. And looks like we've got a pretty full-looking picture here. So
can you toss a link to me? I'll
Yeah,
pull
I
it up
can.
on stream. Huh.
Yep.
When you started mentioning Grail, that makes me wonder, is this even a Pathfinder related thing? Because I'm not aware of any Grail importance in Pathfinder at all. No Arthurian type legendary.
Well, it continues that, of course, no one is stopping you from guessing what is coming up in the comments. Good luck, Pathfinders.
Well, never mind then. Then we know it's got to be Pathfinder related, or else they wouldn't have said that.
And from the look of this picture, I believe it's
Link.
I sent it. It's in our
I
chat.
can't access the chat.
Well, where do you want me to put it?
Hold on,
Discord?
dang. I'm gonna grab it from chat.
Hold on, no, our chat. It's on Discord, not on Twitch.
I know.
Okay. Do you want it in Twitch?
I got it now.
Okay. They say it's a puzzle, but it looks like it's got all the pieces, unless those are going to be replaced with some other kind of images. I'm more confused than anything by what I've just read.
And there we go. It's a woodblock puzzle piece. This is totally complete. There's no missing pieces here.
So unless you remove a piece and it's got some alternate picture on under there.
Oh, that would be much more tricky. I do not recognize this art from anything. Do you?
Nope.
Nope.
It kind of has a Sandpoint vibe.
Kinda, but I don't see any notable NPCs or Sandpoint uniqueness in it at all.
Yeah.
And Sandpoint has a lot of unique visuals that I would recognize. It's a weird freaking dog in the lower left corner, though.
Yeah, he's a little wiry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the news. Is that the news you wanted us to cover? Descriptionist? Is there something more you know about this than I just found? If so, let me know in chat. But for now, Param, looks like I'm out of news items. Other than this is more of a plug than anything. But Hero Forge Black Friday sale looks really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is usually my go-to Christmas gift for gaming friends. As a Hero Lab token, or Hero Lab, not Hero Lab, Hero Forge.
Did I say Hero Lab or Hero Forge?
You probably said it correctly.
Oh, good. I cannot guarantee that.
Elf says it's a reference to Heroes of Might and Magic. Okay, each article locked enough will remove a piece to show the real picture, so you were right.
So the Hero Forge thing we were just talking about is a discount code, an offer code, Epic Holiday, to get $5 off one 3D printed mini. But what I think is more interesting is you can get your digital downloads if you have access to a 3D printer for $3.99, which is I think half price. Like, they were going for $10, they were reduced to about $7.50, and now they're going for $3.99 during this Black Friday sale.
Cool.
Going until Monday the 2nd.
And Anycubics are getting real cheap. You can get resin printers like real cheap right now. They're very small, but you only need small to RPG. And that's kind of the only reason I'd want a resin printer, is because that's what you need to get the detail to make glorious looking art.
My coworker that printed them on a Homebrew miniature left his 3D printer in, I believe, a room that was too cold, and it grokked everything up, and now we can't use it. No. So I'm just going to recommend, if you are getting a 3D printer, read the instructions, read the best care.
Right. And these instructions are very different for a resin printer v a extrusion printer. An FDM printer is less temperamental than a resin printer. Also, if you get a resin printer, make sure you do very carefully read the instructions and wear gloves, because that stuff is quite literally toxic.
All right, Pam, we're at the end of the news segment. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm good. Just next week, if you're going to be in PAX, hey, a bunch of us are going to be. We don't have any events planned, but a whole bunch of the networks is going to be at PAX Unplugged. So that's next week, and I figure since it's next week, that is sort of a news item for us instead of a shout out.
Yeah, sure. I won't be making it. This will be the first PAX Unplugs I don't make too, which this being only the third one means that's not that huge of a deal. Although it's a disappointment. It would
You
have been
missed a
nice.
third of them.
I know. Well, I haven't yet, but I totally will. It's not like I'm going to suddenly turn around and make some plans.
Right.
It would have been cool to go there, especially any opportunity to see you in, meet space is always a good time, but it was not in the cards for me this time.
But of the KD crew that y'all are familiar with, me and V are going to be there for the duration. Rob, one of our new members, is going to be there. Also, Luis Loza, he's going to be there repping Paizo for the convention. He's one of the people being sent from Paizo, which I'm super happy about. I mean, unless last minute changes happen, and last minute changes can always happen when it comes to convention work in Paizo and exploding books. And also, Alex and James won't be there for the whole convention, but they will be there for some of it. It's home sweet home for them, so that's a really easy trip. And I know that our friends over at Roll for Combat, Steven, you're going to be there. Oh yeah, he says so in chat.
Yeah,
Steven's going to be there from Roll for Combat. So a whole lot of KDs and KD adjacent friendlies are going to be at the convention, and I'm super pumped for it.
What are your expectations for PAX Unplugged?
I expect it to be very indie focused. I expect it to have lots of, not Gen Con level booth area, but I expect it to have a decent exhibition area and a much more disorganized signing up for game experience, which has unfortunately been my experience trying to sign up for games for this thing.
That's unfortunate. I'm trying to figure out what the focus was on indie RPGs, because I went as an exhibitor, but I definitely had a chance to walk the hall a few times. But I don't shop for indie RPGs, so there was a lot of artisan accessories. There was a lot of fancy dice and fancy rolling trays, things like that. Wormwood was there. I believe Dwarven Forge was there. They had a really cool booth. What's the other major wood company?
Dogmite?
Yes, Dogmite was there. So yeah, if you're looking for accessories, that is something I remember being quite prominent. And otherwise, board games, although it was more board game stores than publishers, there were some publishers there.
So, like, the reason this is my first time. You've actually been twice. The reason I was expecting a more indie presence is because that's just sort of been PAX's identity as a whole. As like for the video game space, it's the convention you go to see the cool stuff coming out in the indie space.
So the thing about the board game and the tabletop industry is that it's kind of all indie.
I know,
like,
it's so weird.
Thousands of small companies that they could definitely make a living and support several employees at it. But there are very few big dogs, and the biggest dogs are not that much bigger than the medium dogs.
Like, I mean, let's look who's in the industry. The top 5. If you look at the top 5 best-selling games, the companies that rep those games are always Wizard of the Coast.
Yep.
Paizo.
Yep.
Fantasy Flight.
Yep.
Green Running.
Yep.
And I don't know who would be 5th, because those are the only 4 I know that consistently hit that
White
list.
Wolf?
White Wolf on and off, but White Wolf is in a very weird spot right now. I guess the other biggest player I would say would be Catalyst, because of Mech Warrior and Shadowrun. And those are both on the big up and up right now because they had very successful video game properties that have boosted their visual, their optics. Like, a lot more people are paying attention to those properties because very successful video games have hit in those spaces recently. And Mech Warrior, that video game is so freaking. You have not played the BattleTech strategy game for computer, get it. It's amazing. It is like super cheap right now on the Steam sale for Black Friday, so it's amazing. Get to roleplay in it. I did not expect you would get to roleplay.
Oh, cool. I did not expect that either.
No, there's this whole campaign story thing, and you have like little character side moments, and you have to make hard decisions, and it's so cool. But and of those companies, Wizards is the only one I would consider big. Maybe Fantasy
because
Flight,
of Hasbro,
but only because Hasbro owns them. But even then, Wizards was kind of big because of Magic and Pokemon before Hasbro. So, and then Hasbro bought them, and they're huge because Hasbro is huge. Paizo is often referenced as the number 2 company in the industry, and it would not be considered a AAA publisher in the video game world.
Right.
Wizards would, but even then, their D&D crew has only recently gotten to a decent size. When 5th edition first came out, they had 3 people, or 4 people if you counted PR. I mean, it was a tiny crew, just basically hiring a bunch of freelancers and working their rear ends off.
I'm trying to remember what Wizards' presence was at PAX last year. I know there was a major push for the Transformers TCG, and I don't remember what the D&D presence was.
And Fantasy Flight I would consider to be a sizable company, but they mostly is a board game company that does RPGs on the sly, not an RPG company. And especially since they retire their RPGs at such a frantic pace, and when they retire a game, it is very hard to get that game. They're doing Edge of the Galaxy, or sorry, the new Star Wars games, and they're really big right now. But you know how the Star Wars license is; that could disappear tomorrow. Not wishing ill on them. I'm just saying that when their games go out of support, they basically vanish off the planet. Green Ronin is a very tiny company. With very tiny. Owen and Crystal both work for them, so disclaimers there. But from my experience of how big their company is and the fact that, you know, well, I confidential information, but tiny company, very tiny company. And White Wolf has been dissolved and bought so many times that I'm not even sure the status of that company right now, especially since the big hubbubaloo with their last source book basically meant the company handling them basically got shut down. I don't know what's the deal with White Wolf. So 2 companies would be considered healthy big companies compared to video game companies out of the entire RPG industry.
Yeah, Modifius might be in that conversation. They've got the Star Trek license, although it felt like Star Trek Adventures was being hyped like it was going to be as big as Starfinder, and they both came out at the same time.
Yeah.
And then nobody was really talking about Star Trek Adventures after it released.
Yeah, there was a crew at my local store that was getting into it and play it right now semi-regularly. And I am super impressed with that product. That Borg Cube special edition of the game was just amazing to see. Like, man, top shelf presentation. But I don't see a ton of hype on that online right now.
Ready to wrap things up, Pam?
Yep, let's do it.
We'll be right back with the wrap-ups and shout-outs right after this.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shout-outs.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 213 of No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. And thank you to James Jacobs for joining us for that interview that really shone a nice light on Gods and Magic. I think it's a book that most people are already pretty hype about, but that just showed us that our faith is in the right place because it's the God book.
Oh,
there you go.
You made it almost through a whole episode without a dad joke, right?
No, I didn't. No, I don't do dad jokes. I do the same jokes I've been doing my whole life. They're clever wordplay.
I just think you were always a dad at heart.
Actually, no, I don't. I definitely reject that idea. There was an illusionist podcast that went into like how just like it brushed on accidentally how males tend to express themselves more through jokes than through sincere working out of their emotions, and that the dad joke might actually be a psychological result of having an overwhelming number of new feelings when you become a father. Like there might actually be deep psychological meaning behind the dad joke trend.
Okay.
But that was not the topic of the episode. It was just happened to be they transitioned from one point to another that when taken together, it's like, whoa, wait a second, there's something there. And my friend actually found an article on that topic that I have on my phone open but unread for several weeks now. I probably have about 10 tabs open on my phone of articles that I'm like, oh, I'm going to get around to that. And I never get around to them. Anyway, that's a subject. That is the only way I want to talk about dad jokes as a thing, the deep psychological ramifications of them. Otherwise, that does remind me that last episode I said I wanted to give shout outs to the podcasts I'm listening to. And I figure I'll go alphabetically. So why don't I bust open Podcast Addict and see what the first podcast alphabetically is. Oh, of course, it's 99% Invisible. It's a podcast I believe I've talked about in the past. Yes, I definitely have. It's a cool podcast. It's hosted by Roman Mars. It's actually on the same network as Illusionist, where they just take a topic and they do an incredible deep dive into that one topic. At Gen Con Param, we were talking and you mentioned that if you're ever in a trivia contest, you would get me on your team because I just seem to have all kinds of trivia knowledge. A lot of that is just having listened to 99% Invisible. In fact, yesterday I went to see Come From Away, which is a Broadway musical that is now touring and just landed in Montreal. And the reason I know about it is because they did an episode on Gander, Newfoundland, a Canadian city that just happens to be the easternmost point of North America. And so when transatlantic ships didn't quite have the fuel efficiency that they have now, by ships I mean planes, they would all have to land in Gander. So Gander is this small city of 9,000 people that the Beatles, the first place they touched down in North America was in Gander because they had to land there to refuel. And that they were just saying how like kings and queens of nations and pop culture characters going international have all landed in this small city and just, hobnobbed with the locals. So they've just got, there's a famous picture of Fidel Castro sledding, and it was taken in Gander by a Gander local who just was hanging out with him at a bar one night because he had to get his kid out of the house on Christmas Eve so that the mom could set up the Christmas presents. And it's just this fascinating little place that happens to have a Broadway musical about it, which I happened to see yesterday. Yeah, 99% Invisible is one of those podcasts that has seeped into my psyche and history and has made me a smarter person.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay,
yeah,
adding it to my podcast list now.
I highly recommend it. Not game related, although I think that maybe I was going to say that's where I got my trivia about the creator of Jenga, but no, that was on Freakonomics. It has a lot in common with Freakonomics. So if you're already a Freakonomics listener, you'll probably find 99% Invisible as interesting. Oh, there was something else I wanted to say, or I'm sure there was something else I wanted to say. Param, it's not on my outline, and I kind of free-falled into this podcast plug. So do you have anything you want to shout out to?
We kind of talked about this pre-show. So actually, none of y'all heard that pre-show talk.
I did.
Yeah, you did. There's a really cool article over on Kotaku that's basically look at this beautiful game of Pathfinder. Actually, Rover Combat's Twitter feed kind of was the first person to point this out to me, and then I've since been hyped about it several more times. But it's at Kotaku. Beautiful game of Pathfinder. It's just a Pathfinder group who have put an amazing Skull and Shackles game together using a lot of terrain, a lot of Dwarven Forge, and a lot of care and custom stuff here. It's just inspiring. I try really hard to make my game special, and I wish I could do this. This is nuts.
I remember what I wanted to talk about, Param. It is a programming note, and people may have noticed that we do not play our theme song this episode.
Oh, we can't. We can be careful how much we actually, because of legal reasons, we can't talk too deeply about this.
For legal reasons, we cannot play our theme song anymore. It's broad and weird, and we're not in any kind of trouble because we're just not going to play it anymore. So we are on the lookout for a new theme song. We may commission a new one. We may use some free websites and make sure I keep track of the license this time. Yeah, that's basically it. If you notice that we didn't play it, it's not just you. There is a reason that we no longer have that song on.
Yeah. Also, I was a very grumpy parent because of it.
Yeah, no, that we've had that same theme for 212 episodes. For a while, it was my ringtone.
It was that 212th one, though.
All right, you ready to wrap things up?
I'm ready.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Baron.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.